Hello and welcome to this beginner tutorial on how to build your first autonomous agent using Copilot Studio. I'm going to be taking you through both the how and the why as we work through this, because it's actually really important and slightly tricky concept to get your head around. By the end of this tutorial, you will be in a position to understand what the pieces are, how to build your first autonomous agent, and the use cases and reasons why you might want to do this. I'm going to do a whole lot more on this topic, deeper dives with more complex features. This is really the starting point of something nice and simple. Hit that subscribe button if this is an area you are interested in, and come along this learning journey with me. The scenario that we're going to work with here is for a retailer. So with Copilot Studio, you can build agents that are customer facing, external customer facing, or you can build them to be internal facing, but we're working with a customer facing Copilot experience here. This is a returns policy that outlines different policies and decisions about what can happen based on the different payment methods that the customer has come through with. Now, if you wanted to work with this at the moment, I want you to think about how you might do this. You could have customers email in or call up with their returns requests. Chances are this is something where you currently would need to have a human in the loop to make the decision, to check the policy or to answer the question based on the policy. You might be able to sort of connect it up with a chat experience. What's your policy on this? But what we're looking to do here, what we're going to do here, is build an autonomous agent that can reason over, understand what that customer incoming email is. We will be able to do this with phone calls, but we'll come back to that. What that email is asking for, use that knowledge of that returns policy, make a decision, and reply to the customer. This is not a chat experience. So this is one of the important concepts to understand with where AI is going. This autonomous agent, or agentic AI is the other terminology that's used for this. We are now moving beyond chat experiences to it being able to handle workflows and business processes autonomously by itself, behind the scenes, and making those decisions. Now, you can escalate to a human. I'm not going to do that with this one. We're going to just build it end to end as an autonomous agent. So I'm starting here in Copilot Studio. This is the tool that we're going to use to build this. There's no code involved here, and you can sign up for a free trial and do everything I'm doing here without needing to buy the license. You just go to copilotstudio.microsoft.com, sign in with your work account, and you will be good to go. You only need to buy a license if you want to actually use this thing and put it out into the world, but for building and testing, you are fine on a trial, and that's what I'm using here. So I'm starting here. I'm going to come along into my create box first, and I'm going to go through the pieces sort of one by one so that you understand what we're doing here. I'm going to create a new agent, and what I'm going to do here, you can actually go through and describe in natural language what you want it to do, but I'm going to just click this skip to configure because I just want to sort of work through the pieces in a more methodical way. So the first thing we're going to do is give our agent a name. I'm going to call this returns agent, and you can come in here and change the icon, but this actually isn't going to be, the agent itself isn't going to be a chatbot that's public facing, so I'm actually not going to bother about that. I'm really using this to just sort of run an internal process, but you can do that. The first thing we do here is give it a description, and you'll notice as we work through this concept of working with agentic AI, the descriptions become incredibly important. If you've ever built anything, you tend to just skip on past the description box. I know I do, but don't do that anymore. It actually really matters here. So what you're telling at every point along the way, when you give it a description, you are actually helping the large language model that's working with this to understand what it's doing. So this is like, this description level is sort of the overall purpose of the agent. Why does it exist? So you are an agent that assists with requests from customers to return items purchased at our store or on our website. And you can see there that I'm giving it a bit of an overarching instruction on its tone and what it's going to do. Now we've got another box here for instructions, which we're going to come back to, but this is more just the sort of the reason for being. Why does this agent even exist in the first place? Bear in mind as you do this, don't create an agent that handles everything in a whole department. Like, don't create a single agent that has 25 different responsibilities. You've got to think of your agent as an expert in a particular domain or a particular process. So this one is going to be expert at handling returns. You can have multiple agents and chain them together, but really try to set up each agent as an expert in a particular zone. We can add knowledge and instructions, but the kind of knowledge I want to add here, I'm going to upload a file and I can't do it from this step. So let's create the agent, and this is going to provision some things in the background here. And this takes maybe 30 seconds or so, but what we're going to do is wait for this confirmation message to come up at the top. While that's happening, I'm going to take you through the concepts here of what we're going to do. So on the screen, this is where we're building out all of our pieces here. This is our test panel. So this is a chat experience where we can just test that things are working. But remember, we are aiming for this to end up without that chat interface. It's just going to respond to an email that's coming in. So the way that an autonomous agent works is what we're doing is essentially creating an automated process here. But instead of saying this happens, then if this, then that, check this, check that. And if you want it to understand a returns policy, you might end up in the old way of thinking having to say, if it's this payment method, this response. If it's this payment method, this response. We don't need to do any of that. What we're going to do here is provide it with knowledge. We're going to provide it with that returns policy. We're going to provide it with actions that it can take. So the action it will take is to send an email to the customer with the decision about whether they can return it or not. And we're also going to have a trigger, which is the incoming email from the customer. Now that could equally be a web form, could be a phone call. I promise you I will come back to that, but we're going to work with that as an incoming email. All right, this looks like it's provisioned. Your agent is ready. So the first thing we want to do here is switch on all of the generative AI features. These are in preview at the time of recording, but this is where we're going. So this first one here, use generative AI to determine how best to respond to users. We want to switch that one on. So this is actually meaning that now, instead of the traditional way of an agent going through and sort of having trigger topics and following different topics, we're saying we're going to use these descriptions all the way like we did at the start there, and it's going to understand those descriptions and use that to understand where it should choose what to do next. There's not even going to be, this is the mind-blowing part, there's no actual kind of flow chart of the order of steps in here. It's all based on, here's all the stuff, like you would delegate to a person, you figure it out when you run. So that's what that does, is turns on this orchestration is about the agent knowing where to go and what to do. So it's going to use AI to do that. The other thing you want to check is just to go into your settings here and go to the generative AI tab and make sure this part is on. I think switching that on is enabling that, but just make sure that that's switched on. We want to make sure that we are using the generative AI capabilities to do this is the whole point, and then just select that to go back to your agent. So the first thing we're going to do is to give it knowledge. We're going to give it the returns policy. You need to close that document down, otherwise you can't upload it here. So what we're going to do is come in here and say add knowledge, and you've got choices. Like I said, I'm keeping it fairly simple here. I'm going to just drag and drop and add a file in here. So I'm going to bring that returns policy document from my file and into my knowledge. Importantly, descriptions, can't emphasize this enough. This knowledge source, and what we want to do, it just puts in a generic thing that's not very useful. This knowledge source outlines the returns policy based on different payment methods. You don't have a lot of sort of visibility with what you're doing there, but do that. And we're just going to click add. While it's doing that, let me explain your other options here. So when I upload a file, that is actually uploading it into Dataverse where it's securely stored, and it's going to apply indexing so that it understands the content of that document and the AI can reason over it. If you use the upload document, you're going to have to keep that document up to date. It's a static upload. If I update the source document somewhere else, it's not being updated. So uploading a document is suitable for something that's relatively static. This also gives you a way of having a knowledge base that is completely available publicly, right? So if I upload that document, this scenario here of somebody emailing in, I don't need them to authenticate in. So for an external scenario, that's a choice you can make. You do have other knowledge sources available here. You can connect to a website. So if you've got knowledge on your website, this is a really good one to use. You can connect to SharePoint document libraries. That's for an internal use case. So if you're doing an autonomous agent, perhaps that's checking a travel and expense policy, I might come back to that one. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that one. Then that's something that you would do there because the user would be logged in. You can also connect to Dataverse, which is for things where you might have data in a CRM system or other kind of business applications. And then you've got a bunch of other third-party systems and enterprise knowledge sources in here. It's not just Microsoft. So whatever you're doing there, you just have to sort of think through the use case. But this is where you can get very rich with your knowledge. And like I said, I'm giving you a very basic example of just uploading a document. Hopefully I've talked for long enough there that it's done that indexing. It will take longer depending on how big your document is. My document there is actually quite small, so it should have done it quite quickly. The other thing I want you to do with knowledge here is to switch this option off. Allow the AI to use its own general knowledge. Let's just switch that off and continue. The reason we do that is because I don't want it just using the large language model to just answer questions generally. If someone asks a question about whether this can be returned, I only want it to have that returns policy. I've narrowed its scope now, so that's all it knows. It can't use its own general knowledge from a language model. If you leave that on, it will just try to kind of make up sensible answers. There's a time and place for that. This isn't it. So now what we have is the knowledge sorted in there. Let me just check my notes. We're going to test this, so we'll see what's happening here. So let's give this a refresh to give it a test. And the person is going to say, can I return an item purchased with Flybuys dollars? This is a sort of a rewards points scheme that's used here in Australia. Maybe it's used elsewhere in the world, I don't know. So you can see what happens immediately because I've got my generative AI capability switched on, I get this activity map that's showing me the reasoning here. Now, remembering I'm only using this chat as a way of just testing at each step that each thing works. The first time I tried to build this before I started recording, I just built out the whole thing and then it didn't work. And then I just can't figure out how to make it work. Doing it step by step and doing a little test at every step along the way, much better. Who could have imagined that would be the case? So what we've got here is, yes, you can return an item and it's given the answer, that's correct. And you can see here that it's used that information in there. It's found the returns policy. Now, if you have multiple data sources in the knowledge here, which you can do, it would choose the right one. Again, very simple one to start with, just one knowledge source and one action in this one to get you started with that concept. All right, so far so good. We've got an agent, it's got knowledge, it can actually kind of make the right decision based on the policy. Next thing we want to do is to give it the power to take action. So it can reason over knowledge, but it can also take action. So I'm going to come back in here. Let's come back to the overview each time. So we've got our description. We've got the knowledge in there. So the next thing down here is an action. And this is, if you've ever used Power Automate, this is something that will be familiar to you because it's the same thing. So you can have different types of actions here. The one I'm going to use is actually just going to sit in here as I'm just basically giving it the capability to send an email. You can use a flow if you wanted it to go out and retrieve something and return something. Like if you needed it to take a piece of information and get something and return it, you can use a flow to do that as part of the action. But I'm actually just doing something here where I don't even need to build a flow. Again, this is hard to get your head around. We're going to take our time on this. I'm going to look for the action that's called send an email. And you have to press enter. I always get caught by that one. And I'm using Outlook here, so I'm going to use the Outlook connector, but you can use other services as well. Gmail and so on are in there. So here's our send an email connector. It will ask for your permissions. I'm already logged in here. If you're doing this for the first time, it will just ask you to authenticate. I'm actually also just going to use the Copilot author authentication. All right. We have now got the action name send an email. Now this is the actual action name. You don't have to leave that. And just in terms of providing your agent with nice, clear instructions, you don't need all of this. I'm actually just going to rename this as send an email, because then when I'm telling the agent later where it can go and what it can do, that just makes it easy. You'll see what happens. And I'm also going to just display the name to be the same thing. Description for the Copilot to know when to use this action. So again, use your descriptions well. This operation sends an email message to the customer to tell them whether they can return their item or not. And here is where you can have that option to escalate to a human before it goes ahead. So if you wanted to check these emails before they go out, you could do that. Again, I'm going to let it run here. Now, the concept here, because we don't have it it's not running as a flow, this is just sort of an action that it can do. This is a little bit like the concept of a plugin, if you're familiar with that. There are inputs and outputs. With this send an email one, we just need to set the inputs. So the inputs are who's it going to go to, what's the subject, and what's the body. Now, you can actually just skip ahead and leave all of these options as they are. But let me take you through changing one of them just so you see the options. So who is it going to go to? We want it to go back to the person who sent the email, and it's going to be smart enough to figure that out. Dynamically fill with the best option. It can do that, so I'm going to leave that one well enough alone. Subject, we can also allow it to dynamically fill with the best option, but like I said, I want to show you that you can force it to do things your own way. So let's say for this one, I want to set it as a value. This warning message looks a bit scary, but don't worry, confirm that. And the value of this is going to be your returns request. So you can put in whatever you want there. And then the body of the email, the content of the email, again, we're going to just leave this well enough alone for the agent to figure out what to write in there. You with me so far? We've given it very little. We've given it a subject line, but the rest of it we're saying, let's use the generative AI to do this. We don't need to do anything with the outputs for this one. And we click next, and now this is just giving us a review of the various things we've done. And this is this generative mode that we enabled right at the top of the tutorial. So it's confirming that you need to have that enabled for this to work, and finish. So that's all good. Now what we need to do is go in and let's give this a test, because this should be able to send out an email now. What I'm going to do here is actually provide it with a specific instruction to test it. We are going to come back in the next step here and give it overall instructions so we don't have to do this every time. So let's refresh the test canvas. I'm going to do the same test again, but I'm going to say, can I return an item purchased with Flybuys dollars? Please send an email with the response. So we're going to go through and you'll see here's the session. Now, it might not know who to send the email here to because I haven't actually given it anything, but you'll see it's checked the knowledge sources. It has actually sent me an email just now, so it did work. It sent it to me as the logged in user here. So this operation sends an email, and you can see here that it's figured out, there's my email that it sent it to, and it said, I've sent you an email, and here is the email. For purchases using Flybuys dollars, and it's giving me all of the thing. Now you can see we might want to change this up a bit. We might want it to go, hi Lisa, thank you for your inquiry. It's also giving the citation, which is actually kind of useless here. So we're going to tidy those things up. But you can see already that I've got this to work. It's populated the email without me even needing to, I didn't build a flow, right? I've just given it knowledge and instructions. Let me know if you've got questions about any of this. Like I said, I really want to help people I want to help you get your heads around this. It's hard to understand, but once it clicks, this stuff is amazing. So now what we're going to do is bring it together in the next level of giving it instructions and a trigger. So far I've just been testing this with a chat, but that's not where we want to end up. So we're going to come back over here into the overview. Now the instructions are essentially the replacement for the way that a flow would normally work. So normally you would build out a flow saying, do this, then do that, do this, then that. Now what we're doing is basically giving it instructions in natural language. Think of this as the same way you might instruct an assistant. If you actually had a person to do this task, you would say, when a customer email comes in, please read their email, understand what the payment method was that they used, check this returns policy and make a decision about whether they can return it, and then write an email using a nice tone of voice to explain it, right? That's how you would explain it to a person. So the way that this works is actually very similar here. So we're going to just paste the instructions into here, and this is taking you through, again, step by step, what the agent is. There's a little bit of overlap with the description here, and describing that task very much like I would do to a person, if you can sort of follow along here. So once all of the actions are completed, your work is finished, you should work through all of these things. When you receive a new email with the subject line, I'm actually going to change this because I've got this running in a demo system as well. So we're going to say request to return, and we'll put that in somewhere else too. Perform the following tasks without asking the user. Now you can play around with the wording here. I'm experimenting with the wording, but this is one that works well, so you could copy this. I will put a copy of this in the description if you want to sort of copy the basics of it. So parse the body of the email to identify the method of payment. Search your internal knowledge base information on returns based on the payment methods, and then use the action. So you see here where the action, I renamed it to send an email, to write an email response. I've just put bold in here, it just makes it sort of easier to read. And then you can see that I'm putting in some extra things to tidy up what happened in my test. The email should include a friendly greeting to the customer, provide a short explanation. Please also suggest that they can call our customer service department on this very fake phone number, and then use the friendly sign-off. Do not include any citations. So that should tidy that up. Once you are done with that, you can save. So there's one last piece we need here to make it work. So we've given it those instructions now. It sort of knows what to do. It knows that it's checking that knowledge, and it knows that it can send an email. But now we need a way to make all of this happen without somebody having to type in a chatbot. And the way we do that is to add a trigger. Now, again, if you've done any kind of automation flow in the past, this is a concept that's familiar to you. And you'll see here that we've got a bunch of Power Platform connectors. These are the featured ones. If you go into all, there's 51 in there. This is very early preview stage. I expect that we're going to see more and more coming through. But let's start here with this when a new email arrives. So the idea here is that the customer is sending an email in, and we want to respond based on that. So this is authenticating me as the logged in user. We'll click next, and then we can choose to put some parameters in here to say we want this to be only if it's to a certain inbox or to a certain folder. Does it include attachments? Does it have a subject filter? So I'm going to come in here and give it my email address because I just want to test it coming to me. The subject filter is going to be request to return. Make sure when I do my test, I put that in there. And then you'll see it also comes through with use the content from the body of what comes in from the trigger. And that's it. So that's all the pieces together. Now this takes a few seconds. Again, I'm going to take you through what this is doing. Even though we haven't built a flow here, this is actually using Power Automate underneath. So this is all part of Power Platform. It's using the same pieces underneath. So once that is in there, we're going to close that down. I'm going to show you where it is in Power Automate in a second, but let's go ahead and do a test of this trigger. So I'm going to jump across here into my pretend customer. So this is now I'm logged in as Amy. This is a different just generic user. She is sending an email to that email address I nominated with the request to return in the subject line. Hi, can I purchase this item? And we're going to click send on that, and we'll close that one down. So this can take a minute, right? I always want to kind of click refresh, but I'm going to talk you through this and so that you can see how long it actually takes, and so that you don't panic. Give it at least, I'm going to say like at least 2 minutes. It just takes a little while to do. In the meantime, there is an option in here, underneath here, I don't want to move this around, but there's an option to say edit in Power Automate. So what I'm going to do is switch across to Power Automate here. That will open up in another tab. And if I go into my flows, we'll zoom this up a bit, I can actually see the flows. Now this is the one that I was testing before I hit record 41 minutes ago. This is the one that I've just created 1 minute ago. So if we come in here and have a look at this, it's like any other flow, but what it's actually doing is saying when a new email arrives, and you can see those parameters that I put in there, there's my email address and the subject filter that we put in there, it sends a prompt to the agent with the information. Now, in theory, you can edit this. I've found so far that if I try to muck around with this or make changes here, it tends to break. Now, this could be because I haven't figured out the right things I can do with it yet. It could be that it's early preview and that's sort of not part of it. In theory, we will be able to edit this, but for your first time, please just be a tourist and look at this stuff and don't change anything. But if I go back here and click on the back button, you'll see that this is where we start to see the runs as they come through. So we'll give this a refresh and we'll see the run history. Still no runs. We'll have to be a little bit patient here. Can I keep going? We'll see how we go. Give it I find it really hard not to just keep clicking refresh. If we go back here, it's 1 minute ago. As I said, it usually takes about 2 minutes. So one of the other things I did promise that I would talk to you about here is the idea of other ways of interacting with this, for instance, with voice. So Copilot Studio actually has the capability to be an IVR or a voice chat agent as well. Not doing that in this video. That's a whole lot of other things I need to set up to make that happen. But what will actually happen is that you could have somebody coming in and making a phone call asking this question, and the same principles of what it can do here will apply. It can use the knowledge and provide a response. Obviously, it's not going to send an email from a phone call, but you can actually use all of this same concept of an autonomous agent that's able to use the knowledge and use that voice recognition, both of what the person has said and to use voice to respond back, which is pretty amazing. So I'm just going to show you here that I have actually received the email. So at the time that it came through, there's the email from Amy to me with, can I purchase the item? So it should be coming through any minute now. Any minute now will come in here. Did I make a mistake with my... Did I make a mistake with my trigger? Just double check that you've done the thing. So I've put in request. Oh, so here's what I've done. I'm going to leave this mistake in. See, it says request to return is my subject filter. And then what did I do in the demo email? Request a return. Okay. So just to prove that these things can happen, let's grab another one here. Let's call this one request to return. I purchased an item 3 months ago. Can I return it? There we go. We've got another demo one ready lined up in there. So we will come back here. So it's very patiently waiting for a trigger, and I'm very patiently waiting for the trigger. As I said, it does take a couple of minutes, but at some point, if it takes more than a couple of minutes, go back and check your trigger. Questions? What else do you want to know? I do want to run this one in real time. If you want to fast forward on the video, that's okay, but I really want you to see this actually working in real time. So we'll give this a refresh. You will usually see it in Power Automate a little bit ahead of when there we go. Succeeded. Oh, that's worth it. Whew, I do know what I'm doing. All right. Hopefully by now, there we go. It comes in. So you see it in Power Automate slightly ahead. If you're impatient like me, you can have your Power Automate window open at the same time. Once that's there, that's now just tested that the trigger works, but it hasn't tested the rest of the thing. So I'm going to click this Start Testing button, and now the Start Testing is going to go through all of the instructions of what it's doing. So it's sort of showing me the chat thread here, but I haven't initiated this with a chat. I've initiated it with the email coming through. So you can see what's happened here. I don't know if the audio picked up that there was an email that just came through, but now what we've got is that it's come through, it's checked the knowledge sources, and I could open this if I wanted to see what's gone on in there, and then we can go through the connector and you can see that it's got a nice hi Amy this time. And here is, you can see I'm at 11:51 on my computer here in real time. Here is the email to Amy. Now, I didn't tell it at any point. Did you notice? I didn't say didn't have to do a flow that says when an email comes in, get the email address, put it back in. I just said, hey, agent, you figure it out. And this is the email that's gone to Amy. Thank you for reaching out. For change of mind returns, you can do this, and it's giving the information here, including the instruction I gave it to say, please call the customer service department. Best regards, Contoso, and it's removed that citation. Now, the one thing I'm still working on is how to make this formatted much better. I will come back to that. But for now, like I said, I'm really focusing on just the pieces and the concept of what's happening. So we now have an agent that's done all of that, but let's make it work for real, because so far this is just working for a test. So let's close this one down. and I am going to go back to my overview. And if you want this whole thing to work on its own, you're going to need to publish it. Before we do that, I just want to show you how you can keep track of what's going on. So if I go into my activity here, you'll see that we've got these things here where the status is complete. So that allows me to go back into that run. But so far, both of these runs have been me because I'm logged in and I'm just testing it. It's not actually genuinely working. You must publish to make it genuinely work. I tried to make it genuinely work and I sat for 2 minutes and 10 minutes and nothing happened. Click this publish button and publish. Now, typically, if you're creating a chatbot, you'd need to publish it to a certain channel, host it on a website. Nope, none of that. We're just publishing it and now it's live. There is no external facing experience. This is running like an automated flow, like any other kind of automated business process autonomously in the background. And it will just sit there ready to receive emails that meet the criteria that came in. So it's coming to me with that request to return. I need to make sure I get this right this time. So let's come back into Amy's inbox again here, and I'm going to go back to the other one that I had lined up, and we're going to change it. So we're going to say request to return. That's going to make sure I get this right. Request to return. Yes, that's what we want. So here's my draft, request to return. I bought an item with Afterpay. Can I return it? Now, before I hit send, we're going to make sure that I have got all of this published and ready to go, confirmed. So now, complete end-to-end run through here. Amy comes along and sends that email. We wait patiently. What is going to happen? I'm actually just going to bring Amy's email up here so that we can see this come in real time. The agent is going to go through and receive that trigger, understand the email. I've got my hands off the keyboard here. This is always our favorite trick. Understand the email. Actually, I'm going to put my hands back on the keyboard to go to the inbox here. It's 11:54 on my clock. So it's going to understand the email. It's going to check that knowledge source, make a decision, and send an email back to Amy, all within about a minute or so here. So it's not quite real time, but it's pretty close to real time. Now, this is where I'm going to really try and resist the urge to click around and do all of those things. I can see on the email that it's come through to me. So this is the email through to me. So there's Amy's email that's come through to me. Shall we check the flow run or shall I leave it here? I really want you to see the email coming through in real time. Let me know if you've got questions about autonomous agents. There are some other things that I'm going to work on, more tutorials here. So for instance, things where I think the next one is going to be about a travel policy where it can come in and actually maybe check a request and get information from a SharePoint list and check that. But a lot of the work here is figuring out the way, let's see what's worth waiting for. It's so exciting when it works. This is so new and so cool. And I know I'm teaching you something. I shouldn't be surprised when it works, but like this is new to me too. As I said, this is a learning journey for all of us. So you can have things where it can do more things. So this one is just one knowledge source, one action. But if you've got ideas or questions about other things you'd like to see me run tutorials on, I'm into it. Let's do it. So here we go. Again, with the formatting, I will figure that out, but thank you for reaching out. Another answer here. One last thing I do want to show you here is the activity, because now when I come in, all the previous ones were me, but this one is automated because it actually came through that proper full trigger and it's done that job on its own. I hope this has really helped you. Please let me know if you've got this far. Let me know if you've got any questions. I'm going to be doing a heap more on this, so please subscribe. And if you want to learn more about agents that are sort of within the Microsoft 365 Copilot, I've got another video here. Thank you very much for watching and joining me to learn this amazing, exciting new technology together.